everyone. My name is Kasha, and as the video said, I am the librarian at the American Indian Resource Center. While the American Indian Resource Center is currently closed for renovation, we are still offering online resources and schedule events at our select LA County Library locations. I highly encourage you to visit our Native American Heritage Month page and also our American Indian Resource Center page for more information. So tonight I have the honor of introducing everyone to our awesome panelists. Leading tonight's conversation is LA County Librarian and Director, Dr. Skye Patrick. Skye Patrick was appointed to her role in 2016. She is responsible for the library's 86 libraries, 15 vehicle mobile fleet, resources that are used by more than 3.4 million customers across LA County. From the beginning of her tenure, Skye prioritized community engagement through visioning sessions, inviting the public to share their ideas for local libraries. Her mission has been to break down barriers and expand access by developing programs that meet the needs of LA County's diverse communities. Under Skye's leadership, LA County Library received the 2023 National Medal for Museum and Library Service, the nation's highest honor given to museums and libraries. She is also a recipient of the 2025 James Irvin Leadership Award, which recognizes leaders whose innovative solutions to critical state challenges improve people's lives, create opportunity, and contribute to a better California. Skye remains dedicated to reinforcing the library's role as a hub for information, literacy, civic engagement, learning, and belonging. Tonight, Skye will be speaking with Sara Calvosa Olson. Sara Calvosa Olson is a member of the Karuk tribe, one of the largest tribes in California, whose ancestral lands run along the Klamath River in the northwest part of the state. She is also the author of the cookbook Chími Nu'am, Native California Foodways for the Contemporary Kitchen. Her work dwells at the intersection of storytelling, indigenous foodways, security, sovereignty, reconnection, and recipe development, with an interest in using both cultural sound and faithfully updated techniques, honoring traditional plants and animals. Her cooking inspires a new look at the oldest foods in California. Thank you both for being here tonight. Skye, will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kasha.
Yes, Yojwa, Ayuki, thank you for that lovely introduction. And you both crushed it. You nailed it. You got my name right and the book right.
Oh, but wait, I
Perfect.
haven't started.
Okay.
It
Let's
could
see.
be a whole other thing.
Can they be 3 for 3?
Before we jump in, Sarah, it is customary here in Los Angeles County to recite the countywide land acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tactaviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash people. We honor and pay respects to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands, and we are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal government, including, and in no particular order, the Fernandino Tactavian Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians, Quiche Nation, Octavium. Oh, I hope I got that right. San Manuel Nation, San Fernando Band of Mission Indians, Coastal Band of Chumash Nation, Gabrielino Tongva Nation, and Gabrielino Tongva Tribe. How'd I do, Sarah?
Well, those aren't my tribe, so
So you're like, I'm going to be out of that conversation.
that's up to them. They'll have to judge that one for you.
Yes. Well, we thank you for joining us today, and we hope to have a really wonderful back and forth banter, and hopefully it's very educational, inspiring. You know, some of our best programs have to do with food. People love conversations about foods, demonstration about food. So hopefully this conversation will be able to add to that repertoire. So let's get started with talking a little bit about cooking and food and meal times. What was it like for you when you were growing up?
So I grew up on Hoopa lands on the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation in Northern California. It's on the Trinity River. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with the geography of California, but it's up very close to the Oregon border in the Six Rivers National Forest area. The Trinity River is the largest tributary of the Klamath River. The Klamath River is where my traditional homelands are, the Karuk people, just upriver from the Hoopa and the Yurok peoples. So I grew up in this very rural, wooded area, like in the forest, essentially. And so the forest, the river, I mean, I was born in the late 70s. So at that time in Humboldt County, I think everybody might know what Humboldt County is known for, but so even in that area, there was a lot of cannabis growing. And my dad, who is from southern Italy, he's Italian, and he came up there for that reason. And then that's how he met my mother, who had been living there her whole life, and she's Karuk. So they had this idea when they met to like have this kind of homesteading, starting from, using the land and being with the land. And my mom already had grown up learning how to be a terrace gardener. She gardened on the hill, and she was a great, great gardener. My dad would hunt and fish, and we would all, gather. And so this combination of the Italian foodways and these traditional, but also very colonized gathering practices combined really. And we also were really reliant on commodity foods. So we would still hit that commodity distribution for the cheese and the peanut butter and all of that. And so my parents would combine these foodways in order to feed us, but it never really felt like we were hungry. It never felt like we didn't have food. It was right there. We could all see the ways that we could gather food. And we participated in the gardening and the hunting and the fishing and all of that. And my dad's side of the family is very big, loud, boisterous Italian family. And when they celebrate you with food. They celebrate you with a feast. And that's really how they celebrate everything. Like a football game is a feast. Like everything is a feast. It's like, so I kind of grew up with this love language of being like, okay, time spent thinking of you is my gift to, is the way I show love. And I didn't really like bring that home until I was older, when I went to make manicotti for the first time, which was my favorite birthday dinner. My grandpa would take like 3 days to make it. And it wasn't really until I made it myself when I was like, gosh, he must have really loved me to be so happy that whole process. He never showed that it was a pain or that it was, too much work. He was always like excited to get in the kitchen and make this, the crepes and the sauce and all of it. Like, and it was like just dawning on me about how I show love and how I, when I had children of my own, I had access to more resources, but I still did my food the same way. I would still use traditional foods like putting acorn in their waffles or muffins, pancakes, and it just sort of like snowballed into even more recipes as I was connecting them to this gathering practice as
Mhm.
well.
I
So,
love what you say that your love language. Let's talk about that a little bit because, frankly, I think we're of this society where you show it's customary to show love through material things.
mhm,
And but especially when you're a parent with kids, I'm also a parent, so they always want something, or at least mine does.
mhm.
But you have taken a very different approach to really show your care and your caregiver by expressing it through food.
Mhm. Yes, and time. food and time together,
And
because
time.
the food is stuff that if I'm gathering acorns, these are also acorns that I gathered with my sons. So when I'm cooking with it, I'm bringing that time spent together into the food at the same time, and we're recounting like our stories of what we were doing when we were gathering, or do you remember what it was like on this day? And it's an opportunity for also conversation and a gratitude moment for the time that I got to spend with my sons doing something that being Karuk people, which, and it's just something that to me has always felt very special in the way that I show love. And now my sons are older. I have two large sons. One of them is 22 and the other one is 19. But they're like giraffes.
And
And
they're adults.
yes, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they eat, a lot. But as they're getting older, one of the things that I realize is them kind of transitioning from stuff to, Mom, what do you mean you're not going to make the same thing every single year that you make? Are you kidding me? I've been away from home. It's the only thing I want. Or like if they hear I'm making something that's their favorite, they'll Scooby-Doo run over here to get it. And to them, that is like the most important thing. And I can see their default is finding comfort and love and spirit and family and community in the food. And that's what they're drawn to. And that's what's really nourishing them, aside just from, being a familiar, mom food. It's also nourishing them in a really familiar and steady way, the same way that my mom nourished me and her mom and they're like, and on and on and on. And I like being able to pull that thread through of gratitude at being able to see that my sons are also in relationship with these foods in a deeper way.
Yeah, and you bring up something else I think is really resonant here about different traditions. Like when you were speaking about like them Scooby-Dooing home because they know you're going to make their favorite, you name it. I had immediately recalled my grandmother, my personal grandmother, who is both Indigenous and African American, and the traditions of running home to her food and like just like really sitting in that like expectation of something wonderful that took time. It's time, and it was a way of showing love. I think that resonates for a lot of different communities, not just Indigenous communities. So it's an interesting thought in this moment where things are so fast paced that sometimes coming home to your mother's cooking is exactly what you need in this fast-paced world.
Yeah, there's something about the steadiness of it, for me, it's the steadiness of like 10,000 years of being a place to come home to.
Ooh,
with
I like that.
foods that are reminiscent of foods that, people would be eating 10 generations ago, and that it's still, I'm providing that steadiness, that constant, stable, or predictable, or, whatever it is, like, what it's going to taste like, it's the thing. And actually I was reading about how in Korea they have something where everybody uses the same recipe, but everybody knows their mother's hand. Like the mother's hand in it, there's something about your mother's kimchi that tastes so much better, even though they're using the same recipe as everybody else. There's the secret ingredient is is the mother's hand. And I just thought that was, I mean, obviously patriarchal, but still I appreciate that there is something about that in there, that our children grow up with that, like with that same kind of bacteria that comes from a parent, and that they have this deeper appreciation for it because this is the food that they were born into, and there's some generational recipes there. It's the same mother's hand that my mother had, and hers before that, or my dad's mom. And there's a cultural touchstone like that in every place, in every culture, every cultural connection. We can find a foodway that is that deep and
That's
pulling it
exactly
in.
right. I was just going to try to wrap that up nicely, but every tradition is really attached in some regards to food. I know for the African American tradition, we would say that someone put their foot in it. Not literally,
Right.
but when it hits, when it's right, when it hits that very sacred place inside, the food was right. perfect and relevant. I want to ask you another question here about something that you bring up in your book about utilizing native and seasonal ingredients. You kind of talked about it already, where your sons would gather acorns with you, I presume, when they were younger, and that these inspired contemporary recipes. I love what you said about the steadiness of 10,000 years, Sarah. I wrote that down. That was prolific for me. Why is it important to keep things separate? It's like keeping traditional foods and ceremonial foods separate from your vantage point.
I think the short answer is, like, I mean, colonization has taken so much from us as a people. We don't have extensive records about our foodways from archaeologists. It was considered women's work. It wasn't exciting or sensational. So what we do have to us is very dear. And I think that there can be two separate things. You know, there has to be, because we all should have our sacred community in that way. Even if you're not native, like, you still have some cultural background in which sacred community is important. And, you know, for me, even though these are things people could probably easily find out on their own, it's not a practice that I particularly adopt as far as sharing. I try to keep what we have for us when I know that what I was given is a mind to help everybody else come to these foods and these relationships in different ways. Like, I know that I can use whatever my calling is for food and for writing to help other people come to this, and while still protecting what little we have left. And we're still, you know, fighting extraction, and we're still fighting to keep these traditions and spaces intact. It's difficult to build on it when you're still fighting to hold it back, you know, fighting for some foundation there.
Your conversation reminds me of the importance of something like the American Indian Resource Center. We're going to unpack this whole idea of decolonization and what that means in this context. But I think about the importance of personal archives, because as you say, I mean, you really hit it on the head. This was women's work. It wasn't deemed important. There was no record keeping, often no record keeping of women's work. And communities writ large, frankly. I mean, there were some records, but the importance of the tradition, the oral history, and again, from my tradition, the griotism, it can get lost in just a simple generation, because if it's not being passed down, because the lack of archiving. I want to talk about a little bit. I think your book is one of those moments where you have archived essentially 10,000 years of steadiness is in your book, right? So I want to acknowledge the work that you're doing to be the record keeper for your community. I'm going to move on to another question here. So your cookbook is organized seasonally. I remember at some point when I lived in New York, a friend of mine, I never even thought of this, Sarah, and so I'm sure you have, about using seasonal vegetables and fruit during the season that it blossoms. And I kind of make fun of myself, but it really is something that we don't think about. I think the general person doesn't think about. You go to the store, you see all the fruit all the time, but fruit is seasonal as well as vegetables. And so your book is organized seasonally, and it uses a lot of whole and not prepared food, which I'd love to unpack with you. You have recipes for staples like protein, stocks, acorn flour, as you mentioned. Do you have any advice for someone finding the time to slow down and make space for a kind of relationship with food? I think that so many of us just eat, we're hungry, just shove it in our mouth. But your book really demonstrates that there is a relationship with food and a timing and respect. What would you say to those people who want to try to do it a different way, but just maybe don't know how?
Yeah, I would say to start slow. I mean, we can't all decolonize our diets all at once. It would be unsustainable. We don't have systems set up to support that. And you can tell, because even now, like, I live in the Bay Area half of the time, and then I'm up north half the time. And here in the Bay Area, there are a lot of fine dining establishments, and foragers will come up north and gather mushrooms and just wipe it out. We have a really special mushroom that grows up there, the tan oak mushroom. It's also called the matsutake mushroom, and it's a highly sought after, really interesting pine mushroom. It's very different than even other foraged mushrooms. It's really
Okay.
cool. So we see that they are still coming up there, gathering too much, bringing them down here and selling them to chefs in the Bay Area. But none of that money stays in our community. None of that benefits our community, where even though we're the ones that are up there tending it full time year round, not just once a year. We're not just shooting up there to go eat and then leave. It's something that people are up there and on the land year round. And so it's galling when that happens, but we can see that it isn't ready. The land is not ready to feed everybody like that in that one way. And so the best thing we can do, I think, is move slower, like slow down and scale down. So I was having somebody was talking about scaling down as a farm and scaling down as a philosophy. And I think we can think about that in lots of different ways. So when you pick up a book like my book, you might feel like overwhelmed, like I need to change everything about everything that I'm doing, but you don't. Like we're so used to having to be everything all the time, all at
Mm.
once. But I think like we all know that we make lasting changes by going slowly and intentionally. So to really do that, I think you have to start very slow. And I really love a phonology practice. Phonology is the
Mhm.
study of the changing seasons.
Mhm.
And I love that as a practice because it is inviting you to observe something that you see every day that's really accessible to you. It could be a bush, a tree, it could be animal activity, whatever it is, something that you look at every day. Like I have a bay tree right out of my deck, and I follow my bay tree really quite regularly because it's right
Mhm.
there. I see it, and
That's right.
I can take note of when it's blossoming, when how many pepper nuts are falling. It's also we call them pepper nuts when the bay nuts fall. But when we can count how many pepper nuts are falling, I can start to detect patterns over time. I can start to catch the rhythm of my tree that I'm looking at every day. And I can start to feel its rhythm and the way that other things are interacting with it. When do the robins come? When are the squirrels starting to munch around the outsides of the pepper nuts? Like when I start to, become almost like a neighbor. I'm like, hey, what
Mhm.
is my tree doing and
Mhm.
who is in it
Mhm.
and what is going on? And
Mhm.
you start to really pick up on many other cycles, not just the one cycle of your tree's life, but you start to pick up on the rhythms of other things and their cycles and the way that they're interacting, especially at these changing seasons, which we can really see marked changes in,
Mhm.
over this little period of time. And one of the things I think is really interesting that as a people, we naturally start our conversations with like the weather. Tell me about what's going on. Like we're asking each other all the time, what cycles are you recognizing? What is different about the weather this year compared to, it's not just small talk. I think it's like something that we maybe laugh off as small talk, but there's something deep inside of us that wants to know, what are you connected to? Like, how are you, like, tell us as a local, like, give us the details of the weather. Like, tell us
Mhm.
what's happening. What cyclical things are you noticing or not noticing this year? And people always just happen to tell you that. I think it's innate in us. So, starting with a phonology practice, maybe,
Mhm.
and figuring out a way to develop a phonology practice of observation and relationship is the first step.
I hadn't quite thought of that, but you are so right. I've lived in apartments, I've lived in big cities the majority of my life, but when we bought our home, it has a bunch of fruit trees and beautiful flower blossoming trees. And the first year, I thought something was wrong. It was all barren. It was the time of year. But over time, Sarah, I start to catch the rhythm. I know when the avocados are going to come. I know when the figs are going to dissipate. I know
Yes.
when the jacaranda is going to flower and then fall. And so it is a beautiful rhythm. And when you notice it, being a city kid, unfortunately for me, generally disconnected from nature, except for the intentionality that I've put behind it, it really brings me a lot of joy. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, walking down a street, it's like, oh, the magnolias are blooming. And, and to recognize that it's almost here, it's coming, or you see the bud, it's really quite joyous. And I love what you're saying. It's like, you don't have to do everything, right?
Mhm.
Just pay attention. A level of awareness is the beginning step
Mhm.
to, I guess, what we're calling the slow food movement. Is that a fair analogy?
I mean, sort of
Maybe
like,
you tell us what that
yeah,
is.
I'm not really a slow food movement member necessarily. I think they've got, I'm not a, like, I've been to some of their events before, and I think I have a grasp on what their movement is about, and I do appreciate it for sure. But I did want to say one thing before I forget though, is that even though you're starting very slow with this and starting, slowly and intentionally, you start picking up rhythms really quickly, and it like snowballs. And then before you know it, you are saving your own pepper nuts. You're giving them away because you have so many. You're
Right.
introducing other people to this new food that you have discovered, or whatever bush or berry or hazelnut or, whatever is there. You'll start to expand your own community, and then other people will be like, wow, well, I have some acorn that I just picked up. So like these things end up coming into community with you in this more organic way. So even though it sounds maybe like, oh, it's really slow, it's very fulfilling because you're also developing that relationship that brightens your spirit too, because
Mm-hmm.
you are getting some spirit out of it. You're getting the reciprocity is holistic. It's everything. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
reciprocity like
Reciprocity.
I gave you water, you gave me food. It's so much more than that, because you know that in order to tend your garden, it's going to take work. And that work is going to come back to you with something, that feeling good or joyous. You'll feel it. So there, the
Mm-hmm.
reciprocity is all the way around. It's holistic. And sometimes your people, that's how our basketry is inspired, our art, our language is that all of these things were meant to describe our relationships with nature and our relationships with these, like our real elders, and the people that we really answer to are these, beings. So I think like even though starting slow is, it will, as you develop, we're all going to be developing hopefully an awareness and an intentionality in community with each other. So that helps, I think, alleviate that need to capitalize on everything. Like the mushroom people. People will go up there and know, like, this isn't my, this isn't my backyard. I'm not going to take these mushrooms from somebody else's backyard. They'll start to have that kind of sensibility. And I think we'll start to spend more time local. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
like when I think of the slow food, I do think of hyper local food.
Right.
So I think about, but then again, the part that is difficult for me, I think, or that I don't know enough about, is that there are places where it doesn't matter how hyper local you're eating, there's not enough food produced there, or not enough of a reclamation of gathering practices to make it sustainable and to be a subsistence gatherer. There are places that will never be able to necessarily be as abundant as some places in California. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, we have elders that are subsistence gatherers still, but they live 3, 4 hours from a grocery store. and, they,
Right. Right.
and if it rains, forget it. The roads are gone, So there's it doesn't really include everybody. It feels like there is an element of classism or something there that I'm having a difficult time
Mm-hmm.
reconciling. Like Berkeley is not a food desert. Like the Sacramento is not a food desert. All
That's right.
right. And they haven't been deliberately disconnected from their traditional gathering practices that allowed people to subsist there. Like our
Mm-hmm.
traditional gathering practices allowed us to subsist there. 100 years ago, when the National Guard tried to kick out all the hoopas, they went to the hills and they could subsist there forever. And they were the National Guard tried to lure them out of the trees, out of the woods with sacks of flour and food. But they would come down in the night and dump out the flour and use the sacks to leach acorns, because they were not going to leave their homes. So
Mm-hmm.
like the National Guard finally just gave up and said, we're never going to get these guys out of here. And they moved the homesteaders away from the land. And that's what they, how that ended up happening, I guess. But I don't. Anyway, so for
Yeah.
me, when I think about like, okay, so being disconnected from these foodways and these subsistence practices through boarding schools and concentrated efforts at eliminating us from our land, and it is, how does the slow food movement really include everybody? Or, is this just another foraging kind of situation? Also, does it create food shame? Is it is
Mm.
there something that feels shameful about not being able to feed your children organic food or afford organic food, and being told that the organic food is the healthy food, is the good food, and the non-organic food is the bad food? So there's like a food shame element in there as well that doesn't resonate with me, because
No,
again, I
100%.
I grew up on commodities, and
We
but
called
also,
it government cheese,
yes,
right?
I know.
Yes, ma'am.
My first recipe was microwaving government cheese into a cracker. That was my first contribution
And
to
that
my
was a
family
delicacy.
cookbook.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
with
ma'am. And
with
you
with grape
made
jelly.
do. Yes.
Right. And like, and I know my parents were doing the best that they could. And we also were eating foods that would be considered like the height of culinary tastes at the same time. Like, we're also eating salmon and these beautiful mushrooms and all these other things, while also like having these, commodities and stuff. So it does feel like a homogenization of foodways that
Yeah, I like that
isn't
you're kind
realistic.
of teasing this out. This idea is basic, it's literally privilege. It's a privilege.
Yes.
And being in California, especially in the Bay Area, of from which I used to live there. So I'm very
Mhm.
familiar with that strata, the food
Right.
equity strata of the Bay.
Mhm.
And I think you're really teasing out something I actually hadn't even thought of until you said it. The moment you brought it up, I was like, oh my God, she's totally right, right? Because there is this like the, these casts, these food casts, and this expectation that people eat organic, but like completely not even thinking through, need and the hierarchies of need and what's available and money and the whole bit. And so I want to put a pin in that and come back, because I wanted to talk a little bit about the slow food movement, but I think you really did nail it. I want to go back to some of your recipes and your very popular dishes. It says here we got rabbit and Dungeness paella. Did I say that right?
Paella. Mhm.
Uh-huh. And blueberry smoked salmon, which sounds amazing. Acorn miso. Say more. Can you talk a little bit about these recipes and what it means to fuse indigenous ways of eating with global sensibilities, especially here in California? If you could couple that with what you started with the
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, again, like California is, we have a history of indigenous people from all over being here. Even pre-colonization, we had indigenous people from the global south that would come up here in kinship, things that we learned and practices that we learned from them that go all the way up to Alaska. That in kinship, we have spent a great deal of time with each other pre-colonization, and we have influenced each other in many ways. And then in post-colonization, like in present day, I think about California is where there's all these different cultural touch points, different eras in the history of California, oftentimes different eras of scapegoating and slavery and indentured, servitude. And then those foodways are also integrated into our identity as Californians. And yet at the same time, like we consider ourselves like, everybody talks about our tacos, the burritos, all of that, but the way that we treat the people who have brought those foods into our own collective identity is also difficult to reconcile as that part of our identity. But are we really taking care, or are we just being extractive in that sense as well? So
Mhm.
one of the things that I wanted to do, I'm Italian also, so I wanted
Mhm.
to show that like we all have cultural touch points that can help bring us in kinship and community with each other. We have cultural touch points everywhere. And if colonization hadn't happened and we had just organically met each other and we would be sharing in kinship. We would be sharing how to be in relationship with this land. We would share
Mhm.
how to leach acorns and how to live here and how to be prosperous and abundant here. We would share all of that with the people who were coming in the same way that we did pre-colonization. Hopefully, people will find ways to connect to whatever it is culturally to them that also connects them to the land here in that
Mm.
same way. And
Mhm.
my grandparents were incredible cooks. And so I grew up eating really very well with lots of, I think, cultural influences from Southern Italy, which is also a kind of a highway of cultural influences also. So understanding like we all have touch points that we can relate back to and to the land and kind of complete this circle. So hopefully everybody can see themselves in this way. You
That's
know,
right.
I think I want to meet people where they're at so that they can see themselves in it in that
That's
way.
right. And so I love what you're saying. People can see themselves and share
Hmm.
themselves
Yeah.
and absorb other people and their experiences through food, through community building, through foodways, as you would say.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let me ask you sort of the pink elephant in the room, Sara. What does it mean to decolonize food systems? Like, as succinct as you could share with us, I've done some university work, so the idea of decolonization is very near and dear to me. So, but what do you mean when you talk about decolonizing foodways and food
So
systems? I'm sorry.
I try really hard not to necessarily put because it can be very small. Like decolonization is such a scale of it's almost like I almost I think of it almost like the first time that I heard that word and how since then it feels like, those pictures of the universe that they show you and it's like the Big Bang and it expands and turns into
Mm-hmm.
this like you know, infinite cosmos. So that's how it feels to me. It's like it kind of like started out as this kind of a small thing that just blew and I feel like into this big bang of infinite ways and ideas and possibilities and hope that those possibilities give us. So for me, I feel like I think in all of that from and all of that huge cosmos of ways and ideas and subjects of decolonization, that the part that I can help with, I think, is people just getting started in thinking about it, just starting to look at their food systems in a different way. Start to
Mm-hmm.
see that there is more than three kinds of meat. There's more than 5 year-round vegetables. Like eating those 5 year-round vegetables, like even still in season, like there's actually infinite plethora of potential possibilities of foods and colors and nutrition in many different foodways. And when you start to see how homogenized our agriculture systems have really become, I feel like you can't help but feel unfulfilled. Like it's an unfulfilling and repetitive foodway. And you see it by the way that the land responds too. The land does not respond to repetitive foodways like this. It doesn't appreciate monocropping and, the soil degradation. You can see all of that happening. And I think so that's where I'm at, is just sort of opening the can. I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like I'm ready. I can help pop the can for you.
Yeah, quite
And
literally and metaphorically. Yeah.
yeah, and then, I do a lot of rematriation phenology program
Mm-hmm.
and leading walks on the land. And then we have a food component too, where we cook together and eat. And I think that is the part that is really the beginning of decolonization, is really
Mm-hmm.
when the public
Mm-hmm.
is starting to be hungry for an understanding of that and hungry for a relationship. That's when we can make moves together.
Yeah, you remind me of two things, and I was about to pop it in the chat, but I wanted to contextualize it. There's this article that I'm sharing with everyone, but I'll share with you if you're not familiar with Eve Tuck and Wayne Yang, called Decolonization is Not a Metaphor. And so this article was my introduction really into sort of the modern day conversation around what does it mean to decolonize. And these two scholars are two that I hold very dear. So maybe adding this to the conversation at some point for those who are listening. There's another group that I'm so sure you're already connected to in your area, but I'm going to ask you if you are familiar with Kachka Riesling Baldy, and she's at the Hopa Valley Tribe, enrolled with Hopa Valley Tribe in the Karuk also.
Yeah,
Yes, did I say that right?
She's Hoopa and Karuk. Her name
Hoopa.
is Kutcha Risling Baldy. Yeah.
And Caitlin Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've had the pleasure of working with them. We were both James Irvine awardees this past year, and they talked
Okay.
very extensively about food knowledge. I figured you knew each other, but in the event you didn't, I wanted to make sure I made that connection.
Yes, I was the chef in residence at the Cal Poly Humboldt Food Sovereignty Lab last year. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah, so I've known Kutcha for a long time. The work that they're doing up there is incredible. That was one of the most interesting years. I just handed off the residency to Crystal Wapipaw of Wapipa's Kitchen in Oakland at Fruitvale. And she is going to be their chef in residence this year,
I
which
love
is
that.
just like so exciting for them. And this past year being spent with their group of kids and in community with them was incredible. I got to meet with the pre-med students, the Huegaduck students who are getting ready to go to UC Davis and go on to work in public health, and as you know, they want to be doctors, and we got to meet. And that's actually one of the things where we talked about decolonizing in decolonizing a way of learning in classroom, and that I had them out cracking acorns, and they were reviewing case studies about diabetes in indigenous communities, and we had this discussion while we're cracking and cleaning acorns together, and talking about bringing their whole selves to this work, whatever work that they're doing, and recognizing that they are also experts in this knowledge, that as they were born into this knowledge, they have expertise that other people that may not have. Like, they've been taking their aunties and grandmothers to the doctor. They know how they're treated. They know what the issues are. They are active participants in
Mhm.
in community life that way. So having a chance to spend time with them, with birth workers up there. I also do birth work.
Mhm.
And just, yeah, meeting with all the community groups and the students. Oh, just loved it. I loved every second of it. It was
Just
so
such a
cool.
phenomenal way to
Mhm.
think about it from, again, an outsider looking in, you as like a culinary chef. I mean, really, but also working with groups like these women and like building this garden. As I understand it and recall, they had a garden, a very intentional garden where they
Uh-huh.
would, a food lab, I guess is the best way
Yeah,
to
well,
say that.
it's the Food Sovereignty Lab. So they just built
Okay.
the Food Sovereignty Lab, and I got to be the first chef in residence at the Food Sovereignty Lab. So I got to hang out for that academic school year last year and do workshops, classes. I am working with a grad student who on her grad program, and she's doing some really wonderful recipe development that
Mm-hmm.
is geared toward meeting our youth where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
We made acorn Takis and blue corn Takis and ketchup and different things that where we with made out of like cedar. But we had all of these different ingredients that we got to really experiment with together and
Mm-hmm.
develop recipes that demonstrate to our youth that we see them. We see that they didn't choose these systems. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
develop these systems. They
That's
didn't
right.
come up with this. They're just trying to exist and be kids, and it's the things that they want. Or the things that their palates are craving. Those are intentionally developed palates. There's a system that they didn't set up that is intentionally homogenizing this palate. So how can we meet them where they're at, but also push them just a little bit further with their palate and introduce them to things that are a little bitter, maybe, or fishy
Mm-hmm.
or earthy,
Uh-huh.
but still
Uh-huh.
close enough to be familiar enough in texture and taste. But the cultural connection and component will push them through it and pull them
Yeah.
through and develop that love. And it's true, it works. They get excited about it. They can't wait. They're like, yes, like bring it on. So yeah, that whole group up there, all of those students, and they're working in lots of different aspects. There's they do have a garden.
Mm-hmm.
They do
Yep.
community work, youth work, birth work, the pre-med students,
That's
engineering,
right.
fisheries.
Fantastic.
I know. And it shows, and art. The art gallery is right across the way from the food lab, and they were having an Undam the Klamath exhibit there while I was the chef in residence. So, and it was amazing. They had pieces of the dams that had just come down on the Klamath, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a really well done display.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
shows that our food work is at the heart of so much more. Like everybody comes to it in some way. It's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
The art, the engineering, forestry, fire science, storytelling, language.
And then so from a perspective of, so of course this is like more rural, I
Hmm.
would say, in that area of California.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, and you're talking about, and another thing that I think really resonates with me is that you've said repeatedly in different ways that you're meeting people where they are, in
Hmm.
this case the students, and it does not appear that you are passing any judgment on what they eat, what they know, because they didn't, as you say, they didn't build these systems, they're just surviving it, right?
Hmm.
Or trying to survive it. And then the idea of decolonizing from your vantage point with food is just to really be an introduction to the different things and different kinds of palettes that are could be available. So taking that as our lead point here, what could we look for people who are not in rural areas? So I'm thinking of Los Angeles. We're here in
Hmm.
Los Angeles. It's deeply, deeply dense population, city, urban. Although it would be nice to be in the woods with the lake, how would you recommend we start thinking about building systems of community and mutual aid and reciprocity here? Obviously, we're coming on the tail end of a government snap shutdown. And I know that here in the county, we've mobilized to try to support the food banks, as
Hmm.
an example. But what else would you challenge us to consider in this arena?
Okay, so I mean, we are so used to this government shutdown is a good example, but we are used to having the US government go back on their commitments and treaties. And we're used to that. We know that we have to operate outside of that system at all times. If we
Mm,
can operate and utilize the system and work within it, great. But we cannot depend on them to keep their word and follow through at
mm,
and they even grants that they have already you know awarded or had said they're freezing funds. And so we know that this is how they operate. We might, and maybe that's the advantage that Native people here really have, is this deep understanding of how much we have to develop our community and kinship ties. And that's probably also why we're literally like 1 degree of separation from each other. If I don't know somebody in Indian country in California, I know one person who knows that person. So that
mhm,
is how close we are. So I think I would challenge people to find the systems that are already in place. Find the people who are already doing this work, and you'll find people who are working in food sovereignty. And we have infiltrated all sorts of places. So, the at libraries and UC and CSU areas, the tribes themselves often have pretty sophisticated environmental science departments and food security and food sovereignty programs. So I would say finding out what is already in place and figuring out what you have to offer in that regard. What do you have to offer? And know that that system of mutual aid and reciprocity starts with an action, and it doesn't start
right.
with a receiving necessarily. It can if it's serendipitous. That's probably the easiest way to start, is utilize all of these resources like the AIRC that you have, like
Mhm.
Kasha's resources right there. Find out whose land you're on, how are they coming to it, where are they at present day, you know, what kind of systems are set up, and also looking to your own cultural communities as well. They often have their own understanding of how mutual aid works and how to be of service to those different communities. So
Mhm.
and especially in LA, it's so diverse. And I know that there are so many people doing incredible work in different ways there that have been
Yes.
doing it for decades. And since before I was even born, that people have been doing this and having this understanding of how to navigate systems. So finding the people that are already doing the work, not trying to, you know, reinvent anything yourself necessarily, but you have to do that sort of groundwork of
Mhm.
figuring out what's in place already, what do I have to offer, where can I fit in here.
That's right. That's right. I like that. We're coming up on time. I end these conversations with a very simple question that usually ends up in a very complex response.
I know.
And that is, what are you reading right now?
Well, I prepared for it. I am obsessed with the Libby app. I use it all the time.
Isn't it fabulous?
It's so cool. And I love that you can go, I do a lot of library visits, but you can go to different libraries and sign up for the library cards and get as many and get access to their libraries. And so your wait time isn't crazy. And
That's right.
they just cut down from 25 to 15, which I don't know who decided that, but I wanted to go the other direction. I need 50 holds. Okay. I want 50 holds. I can't believe it. Now I have to try to exist on 15. It just feels like so, oh, like, why am I being
It's so
punished?
unfair.
It is, I know. So I heckin' love the Libby app. But so I wrote down because I was like, what am I reading right now? I love to read. And my son calls it library maxing because he's like, Mom, and he's saying, "Ooh, mom dropped a bar on library maxing." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I like
You're
it.
like, I don't know. Is that good?
I
Sounds
think
great.
it is. I'm like library maxing. And I love that you can listen to audiobooks and all that. I drive a lot.
I was
Okay.
gonna say, well, I'm in LA. I
Okay.
a lot of audiobooks.
I mean, so many, and it's so cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wrote down the books that I'm reading. And first of all, I'm reading Sean Sherman's new book, which I actually have right now.
Yes.
It's his new Turtle Island book. I think it's either coming out soon or just came out, but it is so good. It's so cool. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. And Night Magic by Leanne Henyon, which is about just the things that happen at night, the processes that happen at night, different things that bloom or spore or are dependent on the moonlight. It's really cool. So, and The Teller of Small Fortunes by
Hmm.
Julie Leung, which I have only just started, but it's an audiobook and it's one of the sweetest little audiobooks like ever. It's like her voice, the narrator, it's so good. So I'm not all the way into it yet, but so far it's very sweet. And I feel like I'm always reading I always am reading like three books, a cookbook, a book about like a naturalist book, and then usually something scary. But
Oh, I
I
can't.
just got through reading so many scary books in a row that I needed a palate cleanser. So that's why I'm reading The Teller of Small
The
Fortune.
timeline cleanse.
It's true. I was like, I don't think I can hear any more weird stuff for like,
Uh-huh.
I need to, yeah. So I try to streamline that for you.
Well,
Yeah.
Sara, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We so appreciate you and such an interesting conversation, always about food, but the ideas under the ideas, the nuances is what I really respect and am interested in. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Anytime. I'm a super fan of the library. I never say no.
Apparently,
I
do
never
you have
say
one of our
no.
library cards too?
I haven't been to your library yet because I had to go. You have to go in
Do it
person.
digitally.
Oh, you can do it digitally now? Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
dang, I guess I'm not as up on the library news as I thought.
Well, now you got the inside scoop.
Hey, I'll
We
do
have a
it.
rapport.
Okay. All right.
Oh, hold on. Someone's asking me if I checked the QA. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't see it over here. What literature would you suggest for those who want to learn more about what decolonization of food is? I think we kind of
Oh,
answered that, but
yeah, I think we did talk about that a little bit, but resources for that, for understanding what decolonization of food. I would start with, you know what, Tending the Wild by M. Cat
Mm-hmm.
Anderson is such a good entry level. Oh, Braiding Sweetgrass or The Serviceberry by
Oh,
Robin.
braiding
Yeah.
sweetgrass has been recommended several times. You're
Yes.
literally the 10th person who said that to me. So I guess I need
Yeah.
to put that on my radar.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is. It is definitely the perfect. Those are, I think, between Tending the Wild and Braiding Sweetgrass and The Serviceberry, that's a great introduction for understanding what we are talking about when we say decolonization of food and relationship building and reciprocity, which are words that we use quite a bit, but it's often hard to really conceptualize or internalize what those things mean and how you can
Mm-hmm.
actually like do it. And those two will help give you the foundation. So Tending the Wild will help give you a foundation of understanding of traditional agriculture systems and how those have changed with colonization. And then Braiding Sweetgrass will give you an understanding of how you can develop a relationship with your traditional foodways, whatever they may be.
Got you. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. We hope to be able to invite you back, maybe when you finish your next book. I have this dream, and I'm just gonna put it out there that we're gonna like do one of these food talks. We've kind of done this with Roy Choi in the past, but we bring the author and it's like a food demonstration because there's a huge there to
Mhm.
have the author, have the cookbook, have food cooking, have the aroma, and in some ways be able to have people put their, put their foot
Yeah.
in it.
Have a you got to have that tactile feeling. That's one of
That's
the
right.
things, like introducing our kids to these foods again is one of the things that is the best because you see them really touching and feeling like tactile feeling of an acorn. And what does acorn flour feel like? What does it taste like when it's raw and unleached? And it's all of those things that are important. I do demonstrations quite a bit and bring acorns along so people can crack them and clean them and mess around with them. But yeah,
We're going to put it out into the universe that we're
put
going
it
to make
out
this
there.
happen in the next year.
Sounds great. Hmm.
Thank you for joining us, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for
Yes,
joining us.
thank
We'll see you
you.
soon. Happy holidays and take good care of yourselves.
Yeah, thank you.